Torriello, my chief of operations, has been working on this project probably too long. And I came up and chatted with the Matamoras Town Council members and Mayor Roberts from Port Jervis, another councilman, because Matamoras wasn't sure that they would go along with the project if Matamoras didn't. Some on the council still thought it was a good project for Matamoras, some weren't sure. And we wanted to give the local beneficiaries, i.e. Port Jervis, Matamoras, and Westfall Township, another bite out of the apple. This is not a project that affects the entire Delaware River Basin. It affects 3 communities. The communities, with the local congressman, came to the Corps of Engineers and DRBC and said, what can you do about this? We've had a bad flood in the winter of 80-81 because of Ice Jam Dam, and there was a lot of damage. The Corps of Engineers completed a study to determine what can be done, if anything, what alternative methods might be used to prevent the flooding associated with an ice jam dam. The Corps completed that study, looked at the cost of different alternatives and the relative benefits that would be derived to mitigate flooding based upon the alternative considered. The one selected, the Corps will explain all this, was on Mashapekong Island, cut a swath, so the water will have an outlet, and as the Corps will probably explain, as I explained a month ago, this project will not prevent anchor ice from forming up the river. That's a natural phenomenon. It depends upon weather, it depends upon flow, it depends upon a lot of things out of our hands. What the Corps project would do would prevent significant flooding. I think now I'd like to turn the program over to Colonel Clough, and he will explain the project, explain the benefits. I might add that I've always been a devotee of Corps projects. There's never been a dam that's failed in this country. It's a Corps of Engineers dam. To my knowledge, there's never been a flood control project that hasn't lived up to its design purpose. You can't always design a project for the maximum flood or one greater than the flood of record. We can't build a bunch of arcs around, but the Corps has done an outstanding job. I'm sure if this project goes through, that the flood protection predicted will occur. With that, Ken?
Introduction like that, it's I'm going to try to follow up on that, but I just want to say it's good to be here. Last week I spent 3 days down in Atlanta. That was Wednesday night, Thursday night, and all day Friday. And going to Atlanta during World Series time without a ticket, it's kind of like going to Disneyland with your kids and not being able to get into Disney World. And going to Orlando, it was an interesting time to be down there, but this is a lot better place to be. Jerry talked a lot about the project, and what I wanted to do tonight was take you through a little bit of the history, tell you what the project is and where we stand with that particular project. And I have with me tonight Mr. George Sauls, who is the chief of the hydraulics branch, my engineering division, and Mr. George Steinrock, who is project manager on this, and they can go back a lot further in time and have a lot better history of what's been done up here. But this is a picture of the river back in 1981, and I think most of you probably recognize the ice and the problems associated with that. This is some of the flooding that occurred as a result of that. Now, we just drove under this bridge tonight and went over to Fort Jervis and came back, and so gave me a lot better feel for exactly how bad things were back then. And then the cleanup started. And I just throw this up so that everybody gets a feel for what it is we started to deal with. And there was a lot of damage, $14 million worth of damage done back in 1981. And as a result of that, Congress authorized a study for the Corps, the Delaware River Ice Jam study, which really entailed the entire basin, not just the Fort Jervis, Matamoras, but the entire river basin. That study was completed back in 1985. We did a lot of work with the Corps of Engineers, Cold Regions Research and Engineering Lab, CREL. They're from Hanover, New Hampshire. They like coming down here and studying ice down in this part of the country. It's warm down here. Midwinter, this is going south for them. So we used their expertise, and nationwide, I think they really are the recognized experts. This just shows the study area. I said, the entire Delaware Basin for this initial study back in 1985. And during that study, we took this as our objective, and I wanted to show this to you because it's very broad. To eliminate, reduce the potential for ice-related flooding. So we want to eliminate the flooding problem. You got to do that in a cost-effective manner. Don't want to create more problems, and bottom line is we want to make sure that we're not screwing up the environment. So when you go into a study, and this isn't unusual for any of our studies, to take these as our objectives. The first one changes to eliminate whatever the flooding problem or the navigation problem, but to balance the engineering, the technical side of the problem with the economics and the environment. So those are kind of the three things that we weigh out there as we put a project together. During that initial study, we looked at a lot of different alternatives. Structural, that's dikes and flood walls. We looked at trying to do something with the channel, improve the flow. Ice booms, something in the river, diversion channels, other mechanisms for reducing the ice jam once it forms, and then flood proofing, which is doing something to the structures that could be damaged as a result of any flooding. We took a pretty broad look at that, and out of that study, of the whole basin, we really ended up saying that this particular area, Fort Jervis, Matamoras, Westfall Township, the tri-state area, warranted further looks. The initial idea was that there was a channel which could be improved upon, Mashpicon Island, 400 to 600 feet wide. Also, that study also said that we probably put ice booms in up above Fort Jervis, Narrowsburg, and Lackawaxen, and that we had to go back in and look at this in a little bit more detail. So we kind of changed strides there. We went into, this says Section 205, that's Section 205 of the Flood Control Act of 1948. A lot of legislative terminology, but it's a way that we can move faster. It's a small projects type authority that we can move a lot faster than under the normal Corps processes. We elected to do that so we can move out faster and get the job done. So that study was initiated right after 1985 at the request of both New York and Pennsylvania. The ice-related flood control study, its official title, completed in April of '86. And again, we brought CREL back in to look at this particular area, focus upon the issues that we saw here. As a result of that study, going back to the first study, the '85 study, and the plan it set up, our more detailed plan said the ice booms just weren't a reasonable approach to solving the problem. They just weren't effective. So we took that out of the considerations of our alternatives and really came down to three, on a diversion channel the south side of the Mashpicon Island. And this schematic just shows you, and I think everybody's probably pretty familiar with the region, but we're looking at this diversion channel cutting off up here in the north and then coming through down. And it's really part of the natural channel, which is part of the island system. We looked at three different alternatives, I said, varying channel widths from 125 feet to 400 feet. We looked at doing some excavation in that channel, anywhere from none to about 50,000 yards, realigning the channel. All the alternatives required some tree cutting, and it varied from 25 to 115 acres. We say selected tree cutting because we're taking down the bigger trees, everything 4 inches and above. The focus there was to leave as much of the natural terrain in its natural state. Take down the trees, but leave the remaining vegetation in as natural conditions possible. As we went through the alternatives, we also looked at the environmental impacts. The environmental impact statement was completed, and there were varying degrees of impacts as a result of the alternatives. One of the measurements of a successful core project, one that we move forward, is it has to have a positive benefit to cost ratio. In other words, the benefits we get out of this have got to outweigh the costs. And the alternatives we looked at ranged anywhere from 0.8, which is not a positive project, to 1.3 to 1. Out of that, we took the 200-foot wide channel as being the recommended plan. It was the one which the best overall plan. It's a diversion channel which remained within the natural channel that was created by the island. It was kind of the middle approach as far as the amount of trees that had to be removed, the amount of area that would be cleared there. But it didn't require channel excavation or realignment. And that was very important to us because that did the most to maintain the natural quality in the area. The plan also calls for upgrading the existing farm road that runs along the edge of Mashpicon Island. As part of the plan, we also have a mitigation site which we're going to create to the south of the island. This was set up in conjunction with the Fish and Wildlife Service. It looks at creating a pond habitat that will mitigate for the change in habitat that we'll see in the area that will become the diversion channel. The overall cost-benefit ratio, 1.3 to 1. So we've got a positive project there to proceed with. And overall, it's going to take about 100 acres of permanent easements. In this project, we're not going out to buy land. The federal government isn't going to buy any land. We're looking for easements on the property. I pulled this slide out. This is a picture of one of the areas in the diversion channel as you see it today, just to give you a feel for what it is we're talking about. This was taken back in 1985, in April. I was out there about a week and a half ago, and it's a lot greener, a lot of vegetation growing out there, but I think that is pretty representative of the type vegetation you see out there and the size of the trees. This one doesn't show up very well, but it's a little bit more detailed picture of the diversion channel. Again, it swings down on the southeast side of Mashpicon Island. The road that I talked about improving is right along here. There's a ford that comes right across the channel there. And then the mitigation site is located down here. The mitigation will take place on a site which is currently owned by the Fish and Wildlife Service. Well, this recommended plan that we just talked about says it's designed to relieve ice jams. Well, it's not. It's designed to relieve the flooding associated with the ice jam. As Jerry said, we really can't stop ice jams from forming. I guess we could. We could come up with an engineering solution to do that, but the cost would be so so horrendous that it just isn't worth it. But what our plan does is relieves the flooding associated with those ice channels. We're doing that by improving the overflow channel. That channel exists, and anybody who's been out there can see that that's a natural channel which is overgrown, but I'm sure that it's wet sometime during the year. So it's a natural channel. We're going to carry the water and additional ice around the island once the jam forms there. And again, the whole intent is to reduce the flood stages at Fort Jervis, Matamoras, and the township that results from the ice jam. Now, our design is for the 100-year flood. That's the event that took place back in 1981. What made this particular design a little bit more difficult is that we don't have a lot of data on ice jams. They don't occur every year, or at least to this degree, where we get that kind of flooding. So we're taking something which isn't a repeatable event that we can go out and measure every year. We're extrapolating that. We think we got a very good design. I don't feel uncomfortable at all with that, but that's the data that we have out there is on the edge as we plot that. Well, where are we today? What do we got? Well, the plans and specifications are done. In other words, the project's ready to go from a technical standpoint. The current cost right now, total $1.4 million. Federal cost, a little over $1 million. The non-federal share of that is $434,000. Most of that coming in the acquisition of the lands, easements, rights of way, and relocation. Really the easements in this particular project. We estimate right now that the annual operations and maintenance cost, which is a non-federal cost, is about $15,000. And that really means going in and maintaining this area, this channel, keeping the trees cut. So basically it's just tree cutting. The Local Cooperation Agreement, or LCA, was approved by the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works last September. So we're ready to go with that particular document, and that can take a lot of time. We're glad to get that to that stage. So as far as the Corps is concerned, we're ready to go to work. But we need the execution of that local cooperation agreement. We need the signatures on that. We need to get the money. Congress has said we're going to cost share this type project, so we've got to get the money there. And we've got to make sure that we have the easements that are required for this project before we can proceed. And once that takes place, we estimate right now that it will probably take 12 months to get the project actually under construction. And that's really the time we estimate to get all the real estate documents in place. That could go faster, could go longer. That's kind of an unknown. But our best guess at that right now, 12 months. And with that, back to the skyline, and that kind of ends the project definition. That's what we have on the books right now to construct. I guess I'll be glad to answer any questions that I can on the technical side, or George can help me with that. And Jerry can talk about the arrangements between DRBC, which is our non-federal sponsor, and the local arrangements here. Yes. Are there questions, comments?
What is the upgrade of this farm road? What do you have to do to upgrade this road?
I'd say we're going into, we're not turning into a major highway, but it's to enable traffic, trucks to get out there that would bring the equipment out. Basically, we're going to cut trees. And the idea is to minimize the impact to the channel itself. We're going to upgrade this road to take the trucks that would go out there to, once you cut down the tree, to haul those trees back out of the area. So it's just bringing it up to a higher standard, probably a higher classification of vehicle out there.
Okay, yeah, does this classification exist somewhere, what we would be upgrading it to? Or is it just,
George, do you know what, if you got a specific classification?
I don't know the specific classification, but we obviously have to define this well enough within the plans and specifications that we put, so that the contractor can bid the job. So it's certainly definitive enough so that a reasonable contractor can define it. But it would still be, from outward appearance, very much the same as what you're really seeing now, just sufficient so that the trucks won't sink.
I don't have the classification, I can't
All right,
tell you off
okay.
the top of my head exactly what it's gonna look like, but it will be just to carry a heavy classification.
Kurt, you may want to mention, though, that as part of that, in the last feature is the ford, which is a means to stabilize the crossing of the small channel and small stream expected now.
Yeah.
So
So
it
it's
includes that
forward,
also.
it would be, I went out there, like I said, a week and a half ago, it was raining like crazy, and the guy who was driving the car wasn't too thrilled about it. He kept saying, we're not gonna make it, and I kept sticking my finger, yeah, we're gonna get it, we'll keep going. So it's to bring that up to a higher classification, but it's not gonna make it passable under all conditions. We're
Right.
always gonna go over that part of the road.
Thank you.
You know, guys, there's only one comment that I have to say. There's a lot of people, I know there's some here that are saying the Army Corps is full of, this project is not going to work. We are not here to decide that factor. We're here to help the people in the tri-state area. That's what we officials were elected for, and to see to it that something has to be done to help these people. That's the only comment I have to make about this project.
Yes?
This original upgrade of the road, does that come out of the original, the cost plan, or is that part of the operation and maintenance that we have to,
That's part of the construction plan.
that the original upgrade is?
Yeah.
And you talked about the diversion channel. Now, my main problem with this plan is if the ice jam forms, how, with the condition of the Delaware, if anybody came across the river tonight, there's no water in it. How, if this river freezes to the bottom, which it probably will this winter without even extreme cold, being the flow and the condition of the water, how is the ice and the water going to get as far down as the island? So we don't still have the flooding here. What is going to move the ice down to the diversion channel if there's no water to push it down?
If there's no water, I don't think we'd have the flooding problem. Maybe I don't understand the question.
Well, my main thing is the diversion channel and all the work going to be done 2.5 miles too far downstream to help Matamoras, Port Jervis, and Westfall?
But what's happened historically is that the ice jam forms down, that far down, actually, this was backed up. Historically, the ice jam, at least the ice jam. Memory cup, thank you. The ice jam that we're trying, and the flooding associated with the ice jam that we're trying to prevent, the ice jam takes place down here. And that's where it's formed, and so the water starts backing up down here. Our idea is to create this, to improve this diversion channel. It's already there, and back in the '81 flood, it filled up with water. But the trees in there block a lot of the flow of the ice. Once it gets down here, it won't go any further, so our idea is to get the water and the ice moving around this way when the water level gets up high enough.
Do the rest of you remember the way I do, that most of the ice jammed up around below the bridge? Just around that big curve?
In 1982, almost to the day, we had a near repeat. The river was frozen down by the Thirsty Deer, and it was frozen all the way to Milford, and it was frozen all the way to Port Jervis. And when it broke up only as far as the 84 bridge, and it stopped. Westfall Township didn't have a problem at all. I know, I was the fire chief in Westfall at the time. They didn't have a problem at all. Matamoras and Port Jervis were almost being flooded out. The level between the end of Matamoras and the bridge over here going into Port Jervis, there was about a 10-foot difference in height. You could have gone ice skating down here on Rose Lane. You weren't going to do anything up here because the water was just about ready to go over the banks. And that's our big concern right now. If we had a perfect thing that started and it happened exactly the way it did in 1981, that project would work. But if it happened the way it did almost in 1982, that project isn't gonna help us out at all.
I think what we found with the ice projects, and correct me if I'm not right here, is that, like I said, they're all, you know, where the ice breaks up, where it could set up varies from year to year. And
That's
I would say
right.
that you know that much better than I do, but the particular event that caused the flooding that we're trying to alleviate was the event where it blocked up down there at Thirsty Deer and.
Well, what you're saying, in other words, if something happened exactly the way it did in 1982, that project isn't gonna help us. It has to happen the same way it did in 1981.
For this particular event, yes. I mean, if something else happens. and
So if it
there's
jammed
somebody-
down here at the 84 bridge, and it floods Matamoras and Port Jervis out, do we go back to the drawing board?
We would probably we would go back to a different solution, yes, for that particular event.
It wasn't a problem, at least in '82, and all the experts believe that the flooding problem causing jams are the ones that come down at Thirsty Deer. And if in fact there was one at the 84 bridge that could get large enough to cause flooding in the Matamoras Port Jervis area, this project would not solve that problem.
But now,
Do recognize that in the reasonable history, as far as I understand the circumstance, there were 3 events over the last 100 years that caused significant backup, so that I'm not saying you have a couple near misses. You're fortunate in a situation that the near misses don't hurt you. They may threaten you, you may lose a few nights' sleep about it, don't get me wrong. But the 3 that occurred that were really serious problems were in 1875, 1904, and 1981. Now, of course, we can't go back to find out exactly what happened to those 2 old ones, but again, we resorted to people who were experts in the ice industry. They did several years of testing for all this, and they can compare that experience with the experience they've had elsewhere in the country and, for that matter, the world. And we honestly believe that the things that cause you the most severe flooding are these thirsty island jams, and those are the ones that you need to be protected against.
There are jams that form and break and reform as they travel down the river every year, smaller ones, but they form in a number of different locations.
They certainly have traditionally caused you problems.
It would seem that the jam formed exactly as it did in '82, as he suggested. It would probably break again before it came over the dike, just like it did in '82.
That's quite possible.
Whereas the one that formed down below has a lot more backup, and then when it finally does come, I mean, you train the guys to what happens.
so we're basing it on something which we know happened. It's a flood that is recordable. We can go out and say, okay, we know what the damages were, and we can base our data on that. Again, we go back to balance the economics and the technical. I think we could design a project. I'm not sure anybody would want to see it. Lining with concrete and a lot of this stuff. You can design a project that will eliminate ice forming probably anyway. But the cost of that is so prohibitive that it just won't ever happen. And I'm not sure you'd want to see it physically out there in the river. So we're looking at something which is a technically feasible project to alleviate a known condition at a cost that is where the benefits outweigh the costs.
You're not looking to eliminate total ice blockage, you're just looking to eliminate the last 2 or 3 feet. That's where your problem is. Forget that first 10 or 15 feet, that's there every day, every year. We got 3 or 4 feet or 2 feet at the end that's killed us. You know.
These are extreme events, as George had mentioned. You know, the 81 was the largest in 100 years. And there's only been 3 significant events in that period.
Yes, sir.
Right. I don't get a chance to talk anymore.
already said, this is for the people of the valley. If I was here 3 years ago, you could suspect of me that I was here for political reasons, and because I was the mayor of the city of Port Jervis. I'm not here for political reasons, and I'm not the mayor of the city of Port Jervis. But I'm here for the people that I saw affected in this valley. And forgive me to those who may not know what, who already know what I might say. I want to say it just so that I get it out as I see it. The conditions that we have in 1991 are almost the same as we had in 1981. We have a drought. That's our biggest enemy, is the drought. And when you have it, as a phenomenon, you can't control it. Then in 1981, none of us thought about this, but we had the phenomenon of the ice being anchor ice getting right down to the bottom of the river and building up like a layer cake, so that when it did let out, it all let out at once. Now, why did it all leave out at once? Because most of the time it comes down gradually. A little thaw, a little freeze, a little thaw, a little freeze, and you get by. You get scared, but you get by. But we had, if you'll check it back, a record streak of below freezing weather. It was record-breaking. That built up that layer of ice like a layer cake. It built it up and really made a block of ice from here to Narrowsburg or wherever, all the way down the river. But then you had a phenomenal amount of rain. But you still had the ice and you still had the rain, which is a lot of water now. But the ice is still there because it was on the bottom, not with water underneath it. And then